Hello and welcome back to our Let's Talk version. I'm here joined with Dan as always. Hey there, Dan, how are you?
Hey there, buddy, man. How's it going? Life is wonderful. Glad to be here with you for yet another Let's Talk edition.
So it's been 1 week, give or take, that you're off your trip to Russia, and how was the trip?
Well, actually, it was very nice and interesting, of course. And Moscow is a place that I regularly visit because the word trip implies something that is just done once, as
That's
you
fair enough.
mentioned. So that's more like a stay because Moscow now is one of my homes basically around the world. So I have to be there quite regularly to do all my stuff, to do my work, to meet my friends, and I have a lot of people there. So for me nowadays, Moscow really is a second home. And of course, as somebody who has this huge desire in learning and mastering a foreign language, I've been quite obsessed with the Russian language over the years, and I've
Mm,
tried my very best to reach higher levels because, as you know, it's a very darn hard language to master, even to speak, let alone master, basically. So
right.
we had a great time, and of course, I had some other business to do other than just my friends, and we did those stuff as well, preparing ourselves for some of the tough moments ahead. Because as of now, as we're speaking, the price of ruble currently is actually suffering a little bit because of the low price of oil and the new sanctions imposed against Russia by the United States. So, for now, in the world of business and investment, Moscow is not as great as it used to be, let's say a year or two ago, but we're going to survive, hopefully. It was wonderful. I actually got to meet all of my friends and spent a good time there. Had some time to actually, lay off the steam and just, have some fun as well. So generally, it was very good, very productive, and a very happy experience. I was very lucky because generally, usually in November and October, Moscow is pretty darn cold. Like I remember, like 2 years ago, literally, like the Moscow River was totally frozen. But this time it was all
Mm.
great, and like temperature at some point was as high as +8. And you're saying, well, dude, +8 is still pretty cold. Trust me, for Moscow, +8 for let's say fall, that's quite wonderful. And I just had a blast. So had a great one. It was wonderful, and hopefully I'm going back there again to resume basically my work and of course to meet my friends. So generally, it was wonderful. Can't wait to get back again and resume.
Awesome. All right. So seems like it was a lot of productive experience and a lot of fun.
Oh man, I
And
love productivity and fun.
yeah,
Especially
well,
what I love is productive fun. That's like the best.
what is a productive fun?
Or when you combine the two, basically when you pursue your goals that are not only fun and enjoyable, but also allow you to grow as a person and to expand your horizon. I'm a huge fan of these things in life because we only have so much time in life. Let's be honest, and
Right.
we can game of or we can basically try to free time doing things that actually lead to some sort of growth, learning, and experiencing new things in life, which I am a huge fan of. And of course, me being in Moscow usually means one thing, and that's I have a no English policy in Moscow, except, of
Right.
course, for family members like yourself and other business partners outside of Russia. So I have this no English policy there, and that itself is a huge challenge. I mean, just imagine that you are stripped of your mother tongue for like, let's say 2, 3 weeks, 1 month, at any time you're there. That's a
Right.
huge challenge, even mentally sometimes, like literally you confuse the words occasionally. But overall, I'm a fan of enjoying yourself, having fun in a way that is first in accordance to your values, and secondly, it leads to some kind of results down the line. And that's what I call productive fun. I'm a huge fan of it.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's always good to challenge yourself and have fun doing so. I remember back in the days we were having those challenges in our class. um,
Absolutely.
yeah, today's topic. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about something that has nothing to do with our current conversation. It's called privacy. It's called privacy. So, and we don't mean
Well, let's
technological
be
privacy.
honest. Privacy has a little bit to do with our current topic. Be
How
honest,
so?
they say, for example, when you not long ago we talked with basically Ollie, and he went to Vegas, and we told him that whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So it doesn't matter where you're going, buddy. Privacy affects everything and anything you do, anytime, anywhere. So it's just like a very general, universal topic.
Fair enough. All right, so that's fair. But okay, so to clarify, we predominantly mean individual privacy. We don't mean technological privacy. We don't mean the Big Brother hearing tapping your phone or something like that. We
But
don't mean those
dude,
things. All the
let me tell you something. You cannot talk about individual privacy without considering the fact that we have less of privacy these days than at any time before
Of
because of the
course.
technologies. I mean,
No, no, that's
we are
true.
right now. I mean, take a look at social media. Take a look at, I don't know, the last seen status on your messenger devices and your apps and whatnot.
Right.
Ultimately, technology is making us somehow living in a way where our privacies are almost stripped away from us. I mean, like, we no
No, that's
longer feel
true.
like we're away. I mean, literally, if I, for example, had to move between countries 20 years ago, nobody would know where I am, what I'm doing. Just Daniel is gone and he'll be back after 1 month, right? Nowadays, not so much so. I mean, like we have like the Instagram stories where you're feeding every single move all the time. We have all these social media. So let's be honest, technology has made privacy, I think, almost gone. Maybe we can talk more about this, of course, in the process of
Right.
friendly chat today. But ultimately, technology had a lot to do with our basically limited as well as undermined privacy in the modern world.
No, that's absolutely true. And I what I meant is that it wasn't that it has no effect. That was precisely what I meant. It's like that is a different issue. Of course, we're gonna hint on it, which you did, but that's not our predominant topic. We're mostly talking about privacy as a whole, in general.
Exactly.
Of course, this aspect of it fits in a corner of it, but then we're not focusing on that aspect alone. We're talking about the broader concepts.
Precisely.
So yeah, that's very true. We'll get to that in a second. And I mean, let's actually start by defining privacy, because if we're not defining it, maybe we're talking about two different things or two similar things, not precisely the same. So how do you define
Precisely.
privacy?
Well, privacy, from my perspective,
Uh-huh.
is the quality of life that you have that allows you to keep certain things that you do not want to share with people around you to yourself. Now, this depends entirely on your psychology and what you consider to be necessary to share and what you perhaps would like to keep to yourself. And of course, there are different degrees of privacy, and you tend to share a lot more with certain people. Let's think of somebody who is a very close friend that you're working with versus somebody that you meet, let's say, once every now and then, somewhere,
Hmm.
let's say, in a different country, versus your parents, versus your partner, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your wife, your husband. So it all depends on how much you can keep to yourself without sharing. And quite frankly, I believe that privacy is a very, very fundamental, basic human need that nowadays, unfortunately, it's on a major, major decline. So if I cannot hide things from you that I don't want to share with you right now, then I believe that our very evolution is under attack here. Because I mean, think about like things like modesty. Why is it that people cover, let's say, in the ancient time, they covered their genitals when they actually went out and talked to their friends? Why do we have things like we let's say, hide certain things or write certain messages to ourselves? Basically, privacy goes way back to our evolution. This is not something new, and we've always had it. Because of this, I believe that nowadays we are still seeing a tremendous change in technology that is somehow taking away that level of privacy. Because privacy itself is, from my perspective, a chance to reflect without being judged. It's a chance to have things you do not want others to know about you. Because let's be honest, we are creatures of failures and mistakes, and we have a lot of things we do not want to somehow share with other people. Perhaps we like to keep some of our failures to ourselves. So there are many things that we would prefer to keep to ourselves and not share with others, no matter how close they are. And I believe that that is a fundamental need. So what is privacy? Privacy is a fundamental, basic, evolutionary human need.
Okay, I have a few questions here, and I'm gonna ask you all of them, and then you can choose which one you want to go first with. And one of them is, first of all, actually, that's a good question. Why did the early men cover their genitals or whatever with a leaf or whatever they had? And secondly, so you mentioned the idea of we don't want to we want to cover our failures, and I agree with you. And we're creatures of failures, and I agree with you. That's perfectly fine, and that's isn't that exactly what is happening with social media though? Like especially like Instagram or video based social media like Instagram, people go about project amplifying their successes, showing all of their good times, not showing the bad times that they're having, and everybody looking at those things, thinking, okay, everybody's having so much fun, so I'm fucked. So
Exactly.
these two questions I want you to basically address. I think it's interesting.
That's right. So about the issue of covering ourselves up and clothing and whatnot. Well, first of all, part of that was for a very basic fundamental need, and that is the protection of the body and its temperature. as you know, especially for men, this was the case. Not so much so for women, because generally clothing allows us to protect ourselves from both basically cold temperature as well as damages, harms, scratches, and whatnot. And as you know much better than I do, basically, and we all basically know this, ultimately genitals are very sensitive. So the very first reason why we had to actually cover ourselves, especially our genitals at the beginning, was the very fact that they are very sensitive to movement, to damages, and it allowed us to have a protective shield to protect basically our sexual organs. This was predominantly the case, by the way, in basically among men, especially with respect to the testicles. If you look at the photos of various early tribes that have been recorded, most men do not, in those tribes, actually hide their penises. What they do hide instead is actually their testicles for the sake of protection. Ultimately, over time, we had other things added to our culture, things such as, for example, having the ability to be a bit more humble in the society, not needing to constantly compare yourself with other people, and more importantly, a means of distinguishing ourselves from the rest, because humanity has a huge desire to be alpha, to stand out, and this was a way of somehow distinguishing ourselves from not only animals, but the members of other tribes. And these were some of the early reasons. But of course, the other point is about the issue of privacy, because let's be honest, the more clothes you have on, the more of your, let's say, sicknesses or temporary, let's say, acne and whatnot you can actually cover. So a part of that is actually the ability to generate privacy with clothing. And of course, that goes back to our huge need of being able to have certain things to ourselves. So this goes back to the issue of clothing. And how about the other questions? I have to ask you again about those questions.
Oh yeah. So the other question was regarding the social media and the fact that social media, everybody on social media is actually amplifying their fun time, their successes, and they're covering completely their ill fates. So how does that play into the concept of privacy that we were talking about? So you were
Very
saying
well.
Yeah.
I totally got what you said. First of
Yeah.
all, I am not against social media whatsoever. I believe that social media is one of the best tools when it comes to entrepreneurship, because I believe that nowadays, with the help of social media, anyone can reach any audience at any time, 24/7. So personally speaking, I'm not against social media. What I am against, however, is the way most people use social media, because social media is simply the ability to reach a huge audience. However, nowadays, unfortunately, social media has turned into a tool for, let's say, spying on people, what they are doing. This happens especially with the cases with people who might have public profiles. The other point, of course, it's about the tremendous amount of fakery on social media in terms of showing off. I've heard people renting cool cars for like one day with their half a month of salary to show off that cool Lambo that they're driving, just to tell others that they are so pathetically rich when they in fact aren't. And a lot of other things. People just always show their very best moments and happiest moments. And more importantly, it is just plain, dull, boring, and without any educational content. I mean, take a look at what you most often see on most social media posts. It's just
Right.
nothing. Like they take some photos from some stuff that they've done without anything. Like, for example, oh, I'm at the beach surfing. Life is cool. Some smiley, 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 hashtag cool. And that's a friggin' post that you're supposed to dedicate 5 to 10 seconds of your time and even like. So ultimately, social media is merely a tool of reaching others. But nowadays, it's being misused by a lot of people. And because of this, we are actually losing our privacy, because sometimes maybe you do not have a good day. Maybe you really do not have the money to afford a Lamborghini. Maybe you do not have even
yeah,
the chance to portray these things. So because of
That's
the way
precisely
it's
my
being
point.
used,
But that's
that's right.
precisely my point. Nobody's then goes out and broadcasts that, so there's no problem with privacy. Because if that day I have a bad day, I just don't post anything, and people will think, okay, he's just didn't, or they might even not think of me.
Well, let me give you another example. Let's say that you happen to have some money and you travel very frequently. Well,
Okay.
nowadays, a lot of people that see your accounts might say, "Oh, this guy is traveling all the time." What if you perhaps live in a poor neighborhood?
Okay.
Let's say one of the poor bureaus. Let's say you live in Bronx, for example, right? And you don't want your family members or friends know that you have enough money to can travel very frequently. But in that case, generally speaking, many things nowadays are being taken. For example, the geolocations of your photos and whatever it is that you're sharing, where you're going. You're definitely right that you cannot simply share a lot of those things. But by
Right.
not doing so, you actually fail on the economic and entrepreneurial aspects of social media as well. So generally speaking, it's a fair trade, I guess. You trade your privacy for more publicity. And I believe that that totally works out if you know how to use social media. But ultimately, social media is just one example. How about all the messengers, for example, that we have
Right.
nowadays? In the
No, I
past,
mean, I'm not arguing you that it's definitely a problem that can be used for stalking. I agree with you on that. I was just talking about the other aspect of it, actually misinformation rather. Like too much
exactly,
privacy in a sense that you're
exactly.
completely covering one aspect and not just showing the other, but actually amplifying the other.
Precisely
Yeah.
true. And of course, because of these things, and of course, we talked earlier about privacy to other people, but let's be honest, man. Like your phone. Did you know that if you right now talk to your phone about, let's say, traveling, just by talking
Right.
to your phone about traveling, in a couple of minutes or let's say a couple of hours, you're probably going to get an ad of some
Right.
sort of travel agency that promotes this great Hawaiian trip, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's not even talk about the issue of personal privacy with our technology, because now with these phones in our pockets all the time and the cameras being able to record without us knowing and all that stuff, we almost have no privacy whatsoever if we ever wanted one. So, and now with the Wi-Fi and internet always on, your phone can be tapped at any moment. Data could be taken. So, because of this hyper connectivity that we have nowadays, maybe you are not going to share a lot of the bad moments that you have on Instagram. But
Right.
what if right now a lot of your bad moments, a lot of the bad conversations you had with your therapist are now recorded, probably are recorded on your device and then in iCloud somewhere ready to be used at some point. So ultimately, in such a world, if you really crave, from my perspective, privacy, you should probably go live back in the caves or something, and that's not possible. So I'm really fine with the fact that we have to say goodbye to real privacy these days, or at least have to reduce technology at some point to reduce it. But generally speaking, I do believe that privacy is at least important in our interpersonal relationships, because we cannot hope to have privacy, like real privacy, in terms of what we are doing, how are we spending our time. Think of like your laptop. Again, I'm not trying to be like extremely. I'm not a huge fan of like propagandas or like weird
Right.
stories about, oh, the CIA and the NSA are tapping your phones every single day. I'm not into those things. And more importantly, I'm not necessarily paranoid. But let's be honest, a lot of things can happen with your, let's say, what is capturing, let's say, your laptop that is always connected to the Wi-Fi. And it's recording the entire room that you're living in, which, by the way, I'm very curious to check out some point if I ever could hack one to see what's going on in your room by just tapping your webcam and see what's going on. I mean, these are true stories, man. These are not just made up. These things do
No, of
happen a
course.
lot.
Yeah.
Think of all the celebrity sex tapes that are now taken. How are they stolen from the clouds, right? So, generally speaking, the privacy nowadays is very much under attack. But of course, I do believe that at least we can try to enforce some of that privacy in our interpersonal relationships with our partners, with our friends, and so on and so forth.
All right. Well, yeah. I wanted actually to drag us that way. So, okay, technology aside, in our physical life, not virtual life, in our physical life, privacy is important. For example, I mean, so some people are super private in a sense that they don't share a lot of information. I don't mean online or social media. I'm talking about,
In
for
general.
example, exactly. Like we have a conversation. So, for example, I'll just give you a for instance. Like, say a buddy of mine goes and gets a new job, and I've seen him since he got a new job in multiple occasions or something like that. But he never talks about it. And I mean, I guess it's fair game. It doesn't have to talk about it. It's not like he or she is lying, but some people are very ready to share some information or many information about themselves or their surrounding, perhaps gossip, and some people are very private. First of all, what do you think are the reasons for that? What sort of people are more private, and why do you think and which side of things you think is more important to sit on?
Well, let's be honest. First of all, we all need privacy to some extent. So even
Right.
people who might tend to share a lot, they still have that desire to have some sort of privacy. Generally speaking, but for some people, it's a much bigger issue. For some, they actually want a lot more privacy than the others. And I think that predominantly goes back to their overall approach towards life, value, lifestyle, the type of jobs they've had, and of course, the overall level of self-confidence. I mean, the shyer that you are, the more you prefer to keep things private. It's just obvious, right? On the other
Yeah.
hand, I mean, like your friend probably is not necessarily extremely extravagant on his social media, probably isn't into, let's say, the more introverted you are, the less you are likely to actually share and the more private you tend to get. And the more talkative you are, not only you tend to talk a lot of stupid things a lot more than the average, but also you tend to share a lot more as well. So generally it comes down to a few major factors that determines how much privacy you need. Ultimately, it's about whether or not you're an extrovert or an introvert. So the more extroverted you are, the less privacy you typically need because you have to share a lot more to feel happy. On the other hand, it's also about your lifestyle. What type of job do you tend to have? So certain jobs and career paths that require you to have, let's say, contain or work with some sort of information that is not necessarily meant to be shared with the public. Let's say you work in politics, you work with certain governmental organizations. So in those cases, of course, you need to have a lot of privacy. But let's say you're working in a field that does not have a lot of sensitivity in it, and you tend to work with a lot of people. So in that case, you probably need a lot less privacy. But of course, that also goes back to your childhood and your experience with your parents. So how were you basically treated when you shared some of the private information? Maybe the first time you told your mom that you had a girlfriend at the age of 14, she just actually ran after you and just wanted to, start hitting you on all over. You were like, God damn it, I told you not to go there. Go study all of that kind of stuff, right? So it all depends on your early years as well. How did your friends react to you sharing your moments? How did your, for example, parents respond to you sharing certain things about yourself? So generally, the healthier one's childhood was, the less you need to keep things private. Again, that does not mean that you will share everything. It just means that you have a less need of privacy in general, and you are willing to share more because you have had good experience. You've received a lot of positive social feedback by telling others about the things you've done. And this generally tends to manifest itself in you sharing more, like, check this out, I did this, I'm doing that. So ultimately, also on social media, if you take a look at social media accounts right now, you can understand people's general level of extroversion as well as general positive feedback that they've gotten in life by how much they share, how often they share, and what material they share. So generally, the less social feedback one has received that are positive or empowering, the less they tend to share on social media. The more introverted they are, the less they tend to share, of course. And generally, it's also about the feeling of the whole show-off thing. So generally, people who do not like to show off as much are perceived to be slightly shyer, and those who probably have not received as much good feedbacks. Because when you get good feedbacks from society, you generally want to share it more. We already talked about the importance of approval seeking among the humans as one of our basic programming in the evolution. So all of these factors will then determine how much privacy you need. And the more of it you need, of course, the more you need to express that desire to your partner, to your friends, to those who are the closest to you. Otherwise, you will run into a lot of problems.
All right, that's actually quite interesting. I suppose that's true in most cases. Like you're right, and in general, people with more introvert characteristic have the tendency to be less sharing less stuff on social media and the same in their real lives. But okay, so I'm gonna give you a hypothetical situation. I want to know how you would basically handle this situation. Say there is a specific measure of your life that you want to keep private for whatever reason, right? Let's
That's
say
right.
it's a relationship situation, just
That's
for
right.
simplicity, and you want to keep that as it's not particularly secret, but you don't want anybody to know, or a specific person to know. And also, you're obviously, as I know you, you're a moral person. I don't imagine you would be readily lie about anything, and I do understand that. So how do you handle? I
Well,
mean, obviously you don't.
if I'm truly a moral person, I have to admit that everybody lies, including me sometimes. So I'm not going to claim here that I am so
Yeah,
honest.
yeah.
No,
No,
everybody
yeah,
lies. I
absolutely.
tend to lie too sometimes. I mean, it's just part of human nature. I really
Right.
hope that I tend to lie more white lies than bad lies. But if I'm truly moral, then I have to admit that sometimes even I lie as well.
So that's exactly where I was going with it. First of all, what I meant is like not that you'd never lie, of course, but then you don't have a tendency to go ahead and keep lying and don't care about it, or actually you can take joy out of it. Rather, so you don't want to be lying to your buddy, but that's exactly where I was going with this. So would you consider, so if that person specifically, obviously you don't have to go out and readily offer the information, but if he specifically asks about this area and you cannot divert the conversation, would you lie to him about it? And would you, if so, would you consider that a white lie, or do you have another strategy to get out of it?
Well, let's be honest. Lies should, from my perspective, be the last thing you do to protect your privacy. Let's be honest. I think the worst way to protect your privacy is lying. Why is
And I
this?
agree with you.
Let's be honest. If my friend, let's say if my friend asks me a question and I lie about a relationship, like, oh, you guys are dating? And I say, no, that's my sister. Like, but she's blonde and you're brunette. There's something sometimes happens. So in that case, let's just say that I lied and the guy believed it. But if at some point in the future that person realized that I lied to him, then this will sabotage and destroy the relationship because there's no trust anymore in this relationship, right? So for that reason, I'm not a huge fan of lying as a means of protecting privacy because, number one, I am, as you know, my personality, I'm not the kind of guy who exactly is afraid to stand up for what he believes in. And I recommend all of our listeners to do the same thing. Your privacy is your right. I learned this lesson after I have studied some of the biographies of some top politicians. And one of the great lessons that all politicians share and know, basically, is that the journalists and other people, the constituents, everybody, they can ask whatever question they want. And I, as a politician, can answer whatever question I want. This means that we are not obliged in any way to share basically everything we want, all of our information. And this comes down to the relationship. If, for example, a buddy of mine that I do not want him to know about certain aspects of my personal life was in my relationship with my girlfriend, for example, in that case, if he asks a question, then what I would typically do is this. At first, I try to somehow find a way to distract him or simply change the topic. I will do my very best to do that in as smooth a way as possible. However, if the person kept insisting, like, I know you're talking about the weather right now, but how about your girlfriend? You didn't tell me. If in that case, I realize the person, because let's be honest, when you tend to change the subject, 9 out of 10 times people are going to get it. It's like, okay, this guy doesn't want to talk about this. I get it, no problem. But there are occasionally, again, these are the minority of people, occasionally some people who, for whatever reason they want to actually insist on it. Maybe they don't have a good social cue. Maybe they don't understand some of the subtleties we share in society, and they just keep banging. No, dude, but let me stop, because actually, by the way, this happened to me a couple of times, but not just with gentlemen, but also with ladies. Like, let me stop you right now. No, what about, are you dating that girl? Like, something like this. So in that case, you understand that a person is not going to go along with you changing the subject or being diplomatic. So in that condition, you only have 3 choices. Number 1, to end that relationship right then and there, because you're dealing with a person who does not have any social understanding, which is, from my perspective, usually not that ideal. It might be sometimes necessary, but generally it's not my favorite. So the other 2 options that are left is you lie. Is that your girlfriend? No, I don't have a girlfriend. Or you do what I love the most, which is, you know what? I love you a lot, man, but that's private information. Is it okay if I did not share that information? So in that case, the person will then be confronted. I have basically no problem confronting people in anything, in business, in life, because I believe that you should stand up for what you believe in. If you're a guy or a girl, especially if you're a guy, you need to learn dominance. And part of dominance is to stand up and to confront people when you don't want to say things like, excuse me, I prefer not to talk about my income as an entrepreneur. Is that okay with you? So in that condition, you are now facing and confronting the person directly and telling him this information is private. Now, the person in that case has 2 choices. Either he then gets the message and shuts the fuck up, or he continues. Well, in that case, you and I both know there's only one way. What's the best way?
You just cut it off.
There's no other way, because this person is clearly not a friend
Hmm.
This person is clearly a foe who is
Yeah.
persisting on getting information that you do not. In that, it was very nice meeting you. Have a great day, and then you'll never see the person again. That's the only possible solution that I have. So I go through these 3 steps, and if you go through these 3 steps, you won't ever have to lie, because in that case, you can actually live with far better self-esteem and self-confidence. I mean, just imagine you have to go through life and lying about things that you're doing all the time, to every single person. That's just so depressing. Just say, sorry,
Yeah.
private information. Private
Right.
information. I can't tell you that. And boom, you're done.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you, and that's the exact reason I mentioned this because, I mean, not in this in general. I don't like and have the tendency to lie a lot. I mean, again, it would be a lie that I never lie, but um, but yeah, I don't appreciate that, and I agree with you. It can tamper with your relationships quite a lot. So
So
that's
right
definitely
now,
you don't
my
want
man,
to.
let me just do a quick practice here, and
Yeah.
for like a role play for our audience. I want to actually, literally, I'm going to try to be that asshole guy, and I want to see how you react to this. Are you ready? Let's do a quick
All
role
right,
play.
cool. Sure.
All right. So, what up, dude? How's it going, man? I signed with that hot
Good, good.
chick over there, man. Who's that chick, man? Come on.
Oh, that's so funny. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. It's all going well. How are you? How's life with you?
I am doing fine, my man. I just gotta ask you right
By
now,
the way,
buddy.
there was this
Have you
match
seen
yet
those
last
boobs,
night.
man?
Did you
That
see the
girl is
last match?
hot.
It's so much funny. I can't.
That's right.
Yeah, I can
saw
imagine you
guys
in a.
hanging
I
out,
can
touching
imagine you
each
in
other,
one of
doing
those.
stuff together. That was really cool. Come on, you guys got a secret beneath or something? Come on, tell me, mate.
Right. You know what? I really don't want to talk about this. If you don't mind, I want to keep this to myself. I think it's best if we don't, if we skip to a different topic. Have you watched the game last night?
That was actually very good. You see, that was very, very good. I mean, I
Right.
could not even play this role any longer, right? I mean, that's it. You end it. And I really believe that the best way to deal with these things is to just say that. And this is very, very important, because this will then allow you to preserve your privacy without having to resort to lying or to, I don't know, losing a relationship.
Right. Right. No, that's fair. I think I agree with you quite a lot. However, there is one peculiar circumstance that I want to, for the last moments, talk about, and that is okay. You have a very good buddy, and he's not trying to be nosy. He just asks you once. It's not like that guy, that
That's
weird dude
correct.
that you were imitating. But he just asks you once. But if you divert the conversation, or say, or diverting, if he doesn't get it, that's fine. But if you particularly say, I want to keep this private, sometimes that's a giveaway on its own. So what you
Wow.
do then? You know
You
what I
see,
mean?
let's be honest, man. Ultimately, you are right. Sometimes your reaction itself implies some sort of reality. And there are times when lying might be the only option in those cases if you do not want to really give out any information. But from my perspective, generally speaking, I think you're referring to the cases where by confronting the person, you imply that there's some sort of insecurity. However, let's be
Yeah,
honest,
that's
there's always the
or
possibility of you not being comfortable answering certain questions. So,
yeah.
yes,
So
this could be
before you go
interpreted
further,
differently.
go further, that and also the fact that sometimes by confronting that person, you're confirming what you're trying to keep private. You know what I mean?
Of course, you're
That's
definitely
also
right about this
yeah,
matter.
yeah,
But
yeah.
in that condition, let's be honest, the same, let's say
Okay,
girlfriend question, right?
okay.
One of the best ways that you can disarm the person in that condition, if you really feel like, I mean, in those questions, in those cases, whereby asking, by telling the person that I just don't want to tell you this in person because it's private, you might actually give out a lot of information. Then one of the best, alternatives to that methodology would be to simply ask, "Well, I'm actually curious. Why do you want to know?" For example,
Yeah.
let's just say the same person happened to ask me the same question, and you realized by telling that person that's private information, you will actually make the person believe and get some
Right.
information that you do not want him or her to know. So in that
Precisely.
case, another great way is that, for example, because you're like, let's go for a roper right now.
Yeah, yeah.
This time it's your turn.
Okay. So, what's up with you and that girl Janine?
Oh, Janine, first of all, before I go any further, may I ask you, why do you want to know? I'm actually curious. What, you're single or something?
No, I it's just like I heard something. I just wanted to know if it's a truth.
Come on, buddy.
It's true
Let's
or
be
it's a
honest,
rumor.
man. Come on, tell me the truth. There is something going on here. I'm actually curious because generally I don't get asked this kind of questions a lot. I mean, you were literally the first person who asked me this question in like a
Oh,
year
really?
or something. Even when I was single, like, I mean, maybe like it's because perhaps are you single, by the way?
Yeah, I am. I am.
Dude, come on, man. You got to get a girl. Why do you think you're single?
Okay, that was good.
So you see,
I give you
now
that.
the entire conversation is about you, not about me, right?
All right,
And guess
cool.
what? Politicians use this methodology a lot. Let's be
Right, right.
honest, especially with some of the tough, basically, for example, let's say newscasters. They literally use this all the time. So you basically what you do is very simple.
Actually,
They
that's
ask you a
that
private
that
question.
they used to do this a lot. Right now, just they shout fake news.
Exactly. Of course, now trying to make it easier, like fake news all the time. But generally, if you want to go with your friends and be diplomatic, whenever they
Right.
ask you very, like, for example, another very bad question.
Okay.
How much? Let's say, how much money do you make? Who are
Right.
you dating? Have you done this or that? So if you realize, for example, that by saying that's private, you might give some information, just simply use what we call a counterattack. Why do you ask? And if they ask, make an assumption and continue. So I made an assumption. When you asked me, my assumption was you yourself are single. And because of this, you pay a lot of attention to people who have a relationship, and you're probably jealous. Probably, again, on a assumptive level. And then I turned that assumption to a question: are you single? Why are you still single? And now the entire conversation is about you, not about me. And of course, if you're good at talking, then you'll keep talking about this for about 30 minutes or so. And then, oh, by the way, got to get going. Have a good day.
Right, right. No, I see. I see. That's fair. So you're exactly what I liked. You're trying to avoid as much as possible and not lie at all. So that's a good thing
Because
because
this is,
there's a lot of
lying is easy, but it's a
yeah,
short-term strategy, not a
yeah,
long.
yeah, yeah. No, that's true. And then that's exactly what I talk about. A lot of people justify their own lies because they basically by entangling it with the concept of privacy. So so yeah, that makes a lot of sense now.
Exactly. And I want to ask
And
you one question, Pooja. You yourself,
yeah.
how much privacy do you think you need? Let's say from your girlfriend, from your family members. How much privacy do you yourself need?
Well, I don't know how to quantify privacy. Can you put it in a context that I can say like this or that?
For example, are you comfortable sharing the details of your romantic life with your parents?
Well, if it is something super random, no. But if it is becoming something serious that they might need to be involved, then yes, I don't have a problem with that. But I
Interesting. Do you like to
wouldn't go
share
about.
things about your childhood or your parents with your girlfriend?
Say it again. Sorry.
Do you like to share things about your childhood with your parents to your girlfriend?
The same idea. If it's a semi-casual relationship that it doesn't necessarily have a future or a long-term future, then no, I would never do that. I mean, not never, but I would rather not to. I think there are obviously always exceptions. But if it goes somewhere that it becomes it is seemingly becoming permanent, then I wouldn't have a problem with that. Yeah.
Are you comfortable talking about your income with your girlfriend?
Well, again, the same answer basically.
So you
Not
are
initially, ultimately.
ultimately. So generally, what I want to know right now is this, because let's be honest, people think like when they're in a relationship, they must share everything. That's
I mean, they
completely
don't
wrong.
have to. No.
You need to have some privacy, even from the closest people into your life. I mean,
Right.
right now, could there be certain things you might not want to share with your basically? I mean, right now, you don't have to tell me what they are because they're obviously private. But are there right now some things in your head that you would never ever share with your girlfriend, no matter what?
I think so. Yeah.
That's right. You see, that's
Yeah.
exactly why we need privacy. No matter how close we are, we need some privacy. So that's my biggest advice to all of our listeners right now. You need to maintain your privacy, even from the closest people to your life. And know this: if you are keeping things private, that doesn't mean that you don't trust each other. That doesn't mean, I mean, there are a lot of things about you, Pooja, that I don't know. And there are a lot of things about me that you don't know. And there are things that probably we'll never know about each other. But that
Right.
doesn't mean that we don't trust each other, right? The same
Yeah.
thing applies. Of course, in a romantic relationship, it's a little bit different. When you're like sharing liquid with someone, that's a whole different story. But overall, generally, we should know, especially among couples, that if you keep certain things private, that doesn't mean you don't trust, and that doesn't mean you don't love. It's just that that's private. And in all relationships, including romantic ones, there will be points where we got to have our privacy. Otherwise, this will actually spoil the relationship.
Right. No, that's fair. I think that's a fair statement to add there, and I would agree with. I mean, again, it depends on the person. You might feel like you're share again. That's the idea. Like you might share more or less, but ultimately some things are yours, and that's perfectly fine. I think as well.
Exactly.
Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to talk about at the very end of our show?
I just wanted to tell all of our audience about the importance of privacy, first in general, and know that our privacy is being sabotaged by technologies. So here's my advice to you. If you really feel like the world of Big Brothers was just a fiction by George Orwell, think different, because now the world is very different. Be very careful about the things you say near your phone, around your phone, or other devices and whatnot, because ultimately everything you're saying is being recorded and being stored in the clouds and sold to big data companies for a variety of usages. But other than that, in your personal relationships, I really believe that we need to emphasize the importance of privacy. We need to know how to use social media to share what we want without compromising our privacy. And more importantly, we need to know how to respond to questions that might imply that we share certain things about our private lives. So ultimately, knowing these things will allow us to maintain our privacy while at the same time maintaining healthy and trusting relationships without having to resort to lie or other forms of confrontation.
Awesome. Thank you, as always, Dan, for joining us.
It's my pleasure, buddy.
And thank you guys for tuning in to listen to this awesome conversation. We got a lot of good tips, and I hope it helps you a lot throughout your lives, not letting you not lie, knowing how to deal with your technology, and all that good stuff. Until a later episode, take care of yourself.